So we got this model, right? And you can you all see my screen and all that jazz?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. Now the topology is not optimal, but it works. I mean, a little bit denser than it needs to be. But again, now the first problem that I see with this model is that it's chopped up in all these little bits and pieces. And some people swear by this method, but I hate this quite a bit because it makes the model harder to manage. So I don't like lots of different layers. So the first thing I'll do, just to prep this model for animation, is go into the Layers panel in the Layers tab, and I'm going to select all of these layers. If I can remember how to multi-select.
You shift select.
There we go. There you go.
Select the F button.
Okay, so now all the layers are loaded in, right? And I'm going to merge them. I'm going to flatten selected layers. Okay, so now everything is one layer. Everything is happy and good. So I'm going to save this as I don't know, my arachnid thingy. Okay, that's all I'm doing in Modeler. Now into layout. So I'm going to load the model in here. All right, so we got this guy, and he's ready to go. He's like, hey, my legs are stuck. I can't move. All right, so the first step is to place all the bones in this character. Now, normally this could be a very tedious process when you have diagonal resting positions like what this object has here, but I'll show you that it's not a problem with my tools. So, a little advertisement for you there.
Hey,
and we always begin.
Advertise away, man. I want to find a solution to this.
Okay. You sound far away, Chilton.
Sorry, I had my headphone wrong. Yeah, so advertise away, man. I want to find an answer to this, because if I can, yeah, go ahead. So yeah.
Well, let's either far away or eating crisps. There's only two options with children.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah. Now, normally I just like I have my own hotkeys and stuff for adding bones and whatnot, but normally you would start by going add child bone, and you'd call this a COG, and you know, of course you move this. I'm gonna 180 degrees, and the very first bone you place, being the center of gravity, should be placed where you think the character's center of gravity lies. So this looks like where the pivot of everything should be, just right about there. And maybe it'll change, maybe it won't. So that's the placement of our first bone. All right. Now the next part I'm going to work on is let's do the mouth. Now, this is not a very high detail creature, so we're not going to use a very high detail rig. So I'm just going to make another bone here and place it where the jaw, right here. And let's make the jaw consist of, like, I don't know, 2 bones would be fine. Now, if you go into bone properties, of course, you'll need to set the rest length. And you can actually hotkey this, and which is I highly recommend you hotkey this function, because I don't like having panels open, so I can actually hit the backspace key to set the rest length of my bones, right? All right, so we got those, and let me open this up so that we can see how this is set up. Okay, so we got our master null, our object, and then the center of gravity with the 2 jaw bones in place. This very basic stuff. I'll make another child bone and place it so that I can control this area right up here. And again, I'm going to size it. And there we go. So we got the upper and lower jaw in place. And for the legs, the legs are a little bit. Actually, I'm sorry. Let me finish the body first. Okay. this bone is also a child of the center of gravity. I'm just going to move this up here, and that'll control the thorax. All right, now back to the center of gravity once more. Now we need to start on the legs. As I said, diagonal rest positions can be a problem for a lot of people, and this is not just a LightWave thing. Every program has problems when it comes to editing things on a diagonal axis because it requires, you know, more. It involves more when you're moving stuff around, and this is where
I'm glad to hear that. That's always seemed so clumsy to me, and I kept thinking that other apps surely must have a better solution. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's a problem in every application without a specific tool. So let me show you how I deal with it.
Oh.
Oliver, turn off your mic. We don't want to hear your personal conversations.
Thank you, Andrew.
Shit, sorry, I thought I was muted.
No, you weren't. We were all listening in.
Unforgivable. Okay. So here's how I deal with diagonal rest positions. Okay. So we're going to make the first bone for this leg, and now it looks like their leg starts right about here, and we want this at the center of the joint. So, all right, now this is where a lot of people get stuck. Like, how do you make the bone go diagonally without rotating it and doing guesswork? Okay, so here's what I do. I use my rotate average tool, which is part of the RR tool set, and I have it hotkeyed, and I don't have buttons set up, but I'm using a rotate average, and it makes this little ball appear, and I'm just going to move this to the other part of the joint. All right, so that's where it should be pointing at, right about there. All right, and running the tool again will make the tool key it in that position, and now I can follow this up with increasing the rest length of the bone. All right, and then making another child bone using the RR tools rotate average tool again, and move this to the joint. It's so nice not having to guess how these bones are going to rotate.
That is really nice. Why is it called rotate average?
Because it rotates based on the average of the knolls. Like if I create two knolls here, and I use my tool. Hold on. If I use my tool, okay, it's going to it creates a controller item that is at the average of everything that you selected. So that's kind of why it's called that.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a better name that would
that's
be more
cool.
suitable.
I just curious. It sounded like, yeah, cool.
Okay, back to the subject. All right, so again, I'll increase the rest length to right about the center of its joint, make another child bone, rotate average again, and position this at the toe of the character. All right, so there we go, exactly. All right, so that completes the first leg of the character. Now, we do not have to do this manually for every single leg, of course. So what I'll do is I'll rename this. I'll rename this, let's call this leg front left, okay? And I'm gonna call this leg front left for all the parts of the leg. So now it's leg front left 1, 2, and 3. Let me move this here. All right, so now what we can do is follow this up with, let's see, I think it's in the setup tab, mirror hierarchy. So we select the topmost bone of the leg, click mirror hierarchy, and I'm going to replace the word left with right. and then hit OK. And now it's on the other side, right? Now we can do this in the other direction as well. So let's say that I think this should work. If I click mirror hierarchy, and I want to do it along the Z axis this time, and I'm going to replace the word front with back. See if this will do what I want it to. There you go. And now this can be moved, and this will probably need to be adjusted a little bit as well, since the legs aren't in the exact same pose. And again, we can adjust this with rotate average. So just move this over here and make sure that it's pointing at that joint. All right, and then I will complete the tool. All right, now here's another problem that a lot of riggers run into, is that oftentimes they might need to scale their bones, right? But as we all know, you can't scale bones and get predictable deformations in your model. At least not without a tool that will help you deal with that. So what I have is.
But where do we find a tool that will do that?
Oh, it's part of the RR tool set. It solves everything. So now I can just scale up my bones. All right. Now, just to show you why this is important, if I attempt to adjust the rest length of my bone, you see what happens? It's not, the bones are not moving with the hierarchy, and they should be. So it's like there's no way to chain scale this kind of manipulation. So that's why I made a tool called bone scale to rest length. Again, which I don't have this in a button, but it's part of the RR tool set. So what you can do is you can scale a bone and then use the tool. And now we can, I just used the tool on this bone that I just scaled, and now it's back at a scale of 1, 1, 1, but everything has been moved accordingly. Okay, it's like I used the bone rest length tool, but it moved the hierarchy with it, if that makes any sense.
It absolutely does, and that is freaking awesome.
Yeah. So again, I'll just I want deformations off, of course, while I'm setting this up, because I don't want this thing bending around when you know, while I'm making these changes. I'll just move this up here to the joint, and there we go. So I think that'll do it, right? So now the bones are where they're supposed to be. Now I can use mirror hierarchy, and I'm pretty sure this leg is in the exact same rest position as the other one. So I'm going to follow this up with mirror hierarchy again. I'm going to replace string with left with right, and I'm going to make sure that I select x-axis again, and there we go. We have the other side prim and proper. So let's say that this is our base armature for this character, right? And what I like to do is go through each and every bone, and I should probably make a tool for this, and make sure that I'm let's see, record bone rest, record pivot rotation. This is important to do if on every single bone, just to make sure that this rotation of the bones is the rest state of these bones. It can prevent like having gimbal lock at the very, you know, like if you have a bone rest position that is gimbal locked, then using this is pretty much mandatory. So I just like to go through every single bone in character and just use that tool on every bone so that I don't get that. All right. Now I'll select every bone and rest their bone rest position. All right. So now everything, like, it deforms, or if I enable deform, okay, we get this. So not a bad start. All right, we can see that some explicit weighting might be needed for to keep this part from stretching. We can also try to fudge it by changing the fall off type. Let's see if that'll do anything. All right, a little bit better. And I need to set that joint higher, but I'm not going to perfect it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
this is pretty good.
Yeah, so this is basically the start, right? This is without any weight maps or anything like that. Probably good for like a medium range to long range shot, but you would need more explicit weighting for more close-up shots. Not that this thing is worthy of that, with this texture job. Okay, so let's get back. Let's get into like actually applying IKBooster to this thing. You always want to apply IKBooster to the topmost object in your hierarchy. All right, so you notice I have the topmost thing, which this is technically the master null. And we can go into the geometry tab and select IKBooster. So we get these little markers here. Now, I find that these markers tend to get in the way of a lot. You see these like circles all over the place. I actually don't like that. So what I'm going to do is go into while in IKBooster, which is Control B. Somebody's mic is giving me feedback. Who is it?
It was Steve while driving for some random reason.
Oh, we got another driver. Is this another one of those?
Yeah, it was
drive by.
Yeah. It was like, yeah, Steve's driving. Obviously, that's the safe time to share video screens.
Okay. So I'll go into the IKBooster menu, which this also shows like this if the dope track is expanded. IKBooster menu, options, and I'm going to set the controller size to 0 because I just don't like these circles. Okay, they just get in the way. So right now I can click drag on any part of this character and it'll move them, right? But this is not enough. We need something that will actually give us some control over how this thing bends. So again, while in IKBooster mode, which is Control B, I'm going to go to each one of these limbs and select them and go IK stop. So IK stop, and I'm thinking I'm going to want to IK stop the jaw as well. All right, because this basically determines like where this IK stops. It's exactly as its name implies. So now I can move the claws, and there we have that. Now this is an interesting scenario because these are not only diagonal, but they're not rotating quite. It's not a very natural control scheme right now if you just do IK stop. So what you need to do is make all of these limbs quaternion. All right, and I really wish this was multi-select aware in this aspect, but it's not. So you need to go through all the bones and make them quaternion. No, not user axis, quaternion.
That's why you have
everywhere.
A script for it, right?
You can't script IKBooster, unfortunately. Yeah. Like the only way that you can script IKBooster is to do scene file parsing, which it's not practical. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would only do that for an extreme case scenario, basically.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd have done that to the very first one, would it have been duplicated?
Oh yeah, before you did the
I do not
hierarchy.
recommend doing that.
Oh right.
Yeah, I don't recommend doing that because the IKBooster settings, I don't think they'll inherit properly. Okay. So you really need to set each and every one explicitly in this particular case.
You're gonna make the T-bone handle?
A tip bone handle is not needed in this case because the bone chain ends here. So I can still fix this and do that. The only time a tip handle is needed is if you're doing something like fingers, which are children of the hand joint. And so this is in place. All right, so the legs should move a little bit more naturally now, and they're not twisting around and doing all kinds of weird stuff because Quaternion mode on these bones it makes it easier to control. Makes the control scheme much more predictable with limbs. So there you go. I can stab soldiers now. Die. Okay.
In every direction.
We are not done yet. What we need to do now is I'm going to select one of the leg bones, the tips of the leg bones, and I'm going to hold the control button and select the other three. And while holding the control button, I'll right click and fix. So now all of the legs are fixed. So now what I can do is move I can actually move this character around now. You see that?
Cool.
Now I do recommend that you leave IKBind off. What IKBind does is it tries to limit how far away you can move a limb away from a fixed point. But in more cases, I find that this just limits you. All right. So if I try to move my mouse up, okay, it's not letting me move the character any further because those fixed points can't stretch anymore. But with IKBind off, now I'm allowed to do that, and it will draw like little lines saying, "Hey, you've overextended here." So
that's cool. I didn't know you could do that at all, though. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a very
I missed that one.
It's a very deceiving setting because I don't know. It's just weird.
Well, it's useful and not useful, isn't it? As you say, sometimes you want to be able to drag it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes you definitely don't want it to move.
Yeah,
so.
if you leave IKBind checked, IKBooster rigs will often feel stiff. You always want this off in all but the most extreme cases, right? So that's my recommendation. Just leave it off. You don't want
so I have a stupid question that I'm sure you're just about to address, but I just want to ask. If you have fixed all those feet, how do you do a walk cycle?
Okay. How do you do a walk cycle? So
so you just move the feet individually. You don't. Okay, I got
just a moment.
Sure.
Okay, so how do you do a walk cycle? Now, one way to do stuff is to let's say that. Well, you notice the fixed point doesn't anchor while you're controlling it, right? And it also doesn't anchor if you're holding the control key. So I can take this part of the limb and move it around, right?
I did not know that about the control key. That's very useful.
Yeah, it's not documented anywhere. Sorry. That's why I made my own documentation for this tool set. I actually made my own manual for it because the developers didn't feel like, But I should say the developers didn't feel like doing their jobs. I should say it's more like the developer was Japanese and he had a hard time conveying this information to the rest of the team. So,
Ryan, I've got a question for you.
What's that?
Can those fixed points be prevented from going through the floor?
Through the floor? What do you mean?
Yep.
Oh, you mean like if the character moves down for any reason?
No, I mean if you move the feet, like when you lift the body up, the legs detach from the floor but still point towards it. Can you, when you're moving the tip, can you prevent it from going through the floor?
Not that I know of. I mean, like. Again, it's like this is the point.
That's with the bind, right? That's the bind thing.
I'm just thinking if you're
that you have to bake some keys. That
yeah, well, I'm thinking if you.
I remember seeing like a guide for IKBooster where the guy would tell you to bind the keys to the floor But yeah.
Well,
the reason I ask is that if you're animating it, it's going to be difficult to place the foot back on the floor unless it stops there.
No, it's not. But that's another technique that I've resolved. I've actually done a demo of a spider walking on very uneven terrain, and like it used a various other array of tools that are kind of outside the scope of what I'm trying to show here.
Yeah, sure. It's just saying I thought.
There you go, look, Ryan. That's next week's talk.
Go on, man. Go on.
It could be.
Yeah, surface impacts.
Yeah, you could use this model and show Chilton how you make it walk.
Okay, I can do that. Let's see. Of course, understanding a walk cycle is kind of like understanding the creature. Like, you can't make a good walk cycle if you don't know how the creature is supposed to move in the first place.
No, totally. Let me say something real quick. My question wasn't exactly how do you make a walk cycle. I was under the impression that if you fixed those feet, it would be more difficult to make a walk cycle. But I see what you're saying. And with the control key, you can totally just move the feet around and move everything around.
Yeah, and like it's kind of requires a paradigm shift away from the whole everything is automated thing. This is frame by frame keyframing that IKBooster's workflow is intended to operate on, because again, all the constraints and stuff that you set up, they don't actually constrain the character. You may as well be using an FK rig. It just gives you the power of having explicit controls over how things move. So if I only want to rotate this part of the character, it's not a problem. Okay, and I can move it from this tip, and if I want them to raise his leg and stab somebody, bam, 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 you're dead, die, 1d6 damage. Cool. There you go.
So studying these things to quaternions is one of the things I didn't know. And
you want any bone that has, like, if it feels stiff or unresponsive, if you're dragging your rig around with IKBooster, it's probably because you need to set those bones to quaternion.
Yeah, that's cool. So, that is, I'm getting the feeling that I've just seen everything that I need to know to address the issues I ran into. That's cool.
That board, eh?
Is Steve driving to your house, Chilton? Is that where he's driving?
Wow, he must be in a hurry.
No, not.
We see a Ferrari.
Now it's been a long time since I've actually animated this kind of creature, so I like, again, it's one of those things where, like, I'm not going to animate it for you, but
Yeah, I was going to say you don't need to do that. I was curious if I was just getting a point about the fixed part. The walk cycle I can do.
Let's see, maybe this leg could bend like that, push away, kind of, and maybe now this, like, if you make child bones, like of something, you'll notice that you can't click on the tip of certain bones because of the way the hierarchy is set up. If you ever run into this issue, you'll actually need to create a child bone of that bone. And I actually like to set these kinds of bones to joints and make their strength 0, so that you can still select it and manipulate it, but it's just there so that you can rotate it like this, right? And do it that way. So maybe have his weight shift as he's walking. Maybe, and this leg needs to come up and have this leg move back further. Move this down, plant that leg, move this leg back. It's not going to look pretty in the amount of time we have here. But
that's okay. That's okay. This is cool.
What's that?
Can you also use the limitations on heading, pitch, and bank like in normal bones?
Yes, you can. It doesn't work the way that you probably think it does. Like, IKBooster has its own kind of thing for that. Like, let's say that I'm going to put IK stop on here so I can just move the thorax. All right, let's say that I only want to be able to move the thorax side to side. All right. I don't want it to go up or down. So if I'm oriented diagonally in the viewport, okay, I can't click drag and not move it diagonally, right? So you see that it's moving upwards. Now, when you're in IKBooster mode, these three little buttons down here, these no longer represent channel axis locking. This is specific to IKBooster. You'll notice that when you click them, they turn gray instead of turning off. This is channel axis locking specifically for IKBooster. So if I only want to click drag this on the x-axis, well, I can just disable Y and Z, and now it's only moving.
Holy cow.
But you cannot say, for example, I want to have like -5 degrees to the left and +5 degrees to the right. This is not possible with.
I'm not sure IKBooster. You can limit stuff in IKBooster. It's been a long time since I've done it.
You have to get that little contextual menu up there for the limits.
But let me try it this way, just before I give you a. So -25 and 25. Let's see if that works with IKBooster. I'm not sure if it does. I'm not sure if that was a big enough change. Let's say -10 and 10. Let's see if IKBooster actually respects that. Oh yeah, it does. So if you go into motion options, you can actually set all the limits that you want. Oh yeah, this is how I do my character's fingers too. Because like if you want to be able to curl up your character's fingers, which I can bring that up real quick for you.
They only pitch, no?
They only bend so far before they're.
So you're not using IKBooster's constraints for this? You're using motion.
Well, like there are some things of IKBooster that do work with LightWave. Okay, like in this case here, that I'm actually bending my character's fingers, and they're not bending past a certain point. You see how they're not intersecting with each other. This is the proxy version of the character, but
yeah. So is that the IKBooster limitations, or is that a different limitation?
That's LightWave's native limitations. If you go in the motion options,
no idea that even worked with IKBooster. That's cool.
Yeah, it does. You can limit rotations with IKBooster, not position though, just rotations.
Right. Well, so I'm used to just using IKBooster's limitations for stuff. I didn't know that the.
Well, you have to do it through IKBooster if you want to control position, because for some reason that they did it that way. I don't know why.
Huh.
But if you want to do rotations, it'll actually work through the controllers, the motion options tab, and IKBooster will respect that. Okay, so again, I can't curl up this character's fingers any more than what I've allowed, because the character's fingers only bend so far. Okay, so there is that. So sophisticated. Pinky finger outward. All right, so yeah, I mean that's pretty much how I would do it. How I would rig this character. So,
all right, now I'm going to go play around with this. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Oh, one more thing though.
Yep.
Before we wrap this up, you know about the keyframe mode down here, right? I'm assuming no.
No. Well, let's say no.
It's super important. Okay. This little menu here, it dictates how IKBooster will keyframe for every IKBooster related command that you do, right? So if I set this to all item, all right, and I move this character on this frame, every single bone is going to receive a keyframe where I just manipulated. Okay, so we see the character moving forward a little bit, just like that. Now, if I set this to current item, and let's say that I only move the jaw here. Only the bones that I've moved are going to receive keyframes. Everything else is not. Okay, because you don't want a keyframe everywhere all the time, right? You might want to have specific keyframes for specific parts of the body. So,
okay, that makes
but
sense.
it will keyframe the ones that are parented, no?
It'll keyframe, like if the bones have to move, like whatever bones are moving, those will get keyframed no matter what, because you know it has to do that, or else it wouldn't make any sense. So if I set it the current, it's only going to manipulate. It's only going to give a keyframe to the bone that I moved, and any child bones that are moved with it. Okay, so it terminates after that. And this is also important for other functions of IKBooster too. So if I expand my animation to the, you know, let's say that I want to copy this and make this a loop. So if I select the center of gravity bone and I right click drag on the dope track and go, let's copy keys. All right, now only the center of gravity is only the center of gravity received those keyframes because I have it on current mode. All right, so if I undo that, let me undo that change if it'll let me. Okay, so for some reason it doesn't want me to. That's okay. Delete keys. Okay, so if I want to copy this entire animation, I actually have to set it to all item. All right, so it's going to keyframe not only this bone, but the object and the, you know, every item in this character in this IKBooster hierarchy. So now I can copy keys, go like that, and now the animation is duplicated. All right. And of course, sometimes you'll get these quaternion flippage issues, which you kind of need a Euler filter for, or you can temporarily disable it and it'll, you know, sort of fix the problem. But you kind of need a pitch correction Euler filter to fix sporadic problems like that at some, you know, sometimes. So yeah. Anyways,
it's very useful because I never looked into this before because I always thought it was so difficult, but it looks very easy now. Now you explain it.
Well, I mean, it would be a lot easier if it were better documented and it were like it were just better integrated into LightWave, because you know, it's the interface of IKBooster is very unforgiving in regards to giving the user the feedback that they need in order to know and understand what everything is doing. Like for example, I think the bone should highlight. If you're in all item mode and you move something, I think all the bone should like highlight to show you that all those bones are getting keyframed. You know, just small stuff like that would be a huge help to the learning process, which unfortunately it's not in there. So,
but I assume LightWave is not going to adjust this because they're working on Genoma, no? Or?
No, they're not working on it because the developer who made the IKBooster, they left New Tech,
okay.
and like.
And no one understands Japanese code.
Nobody understands the programming that this guy did because he was a freaking genius.
So in LightWave Next, it might be disappeared.
Well, no, it's still working in IKBooster, and IKBooster is still working in Next. You know, we've been told that by Lino, so we know it's still there. It's just, I wouldn't expect any updates to it in the near future, and it probably won't receive any updates ever. My guess would be that if they do replace IKBooster, they're more likely to replace IKBooster than to update it, because you know that way they wouldn't have to understand the code, and the code might be trying to use old archaic methods of getting this level of feedback to the user. So Or
But I'm more afraid they're going to drop it than that they're going to replace it.
Well, I don't know. I can't answer that for you. I know it's not going anywhere anytime like soon, but like it's like it needs either a major update or a replacement. I don't know which one is easier from a developer standpoint. So, but in the meantime, there is nothing like this in the industry. I don't care what you say. I mean, the only thing that even comes close to IKBooster is Motion Builder's human IK system. Maya has that too.
Doesn't Modo have some sort of like puppetry?
It's not
system?
the same because it creates constraints and dependencies on the scene. IKBooster does not. Same thing with Maya. Like the human IK creates dependencies, and you have to work around that. Whereas in IKBooster, you may as well be using an FK rig. You can stack this on top of anything if you really wanted to, because this is just bones you're working with. There's no special IK modifiers or constraints or anything like that happening under the hood. All of the stuff only happens while you're manipulating the character, right? So that's why it works so well for animators who need full control all the time, and there's enough flexibility in there. If you know like really cool workflows and lattices, you can get really fancy with this kind of stuff. You can have a walk cycle of this thing moving over complex terrain, but still have an IKBooster set up in place. But that's another tutorial for another time. So,
Yep. This is perfect.
Yeah, it was very useful.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Ryan. That was really good.
Yep. So that's pretty much it.
But now Steph's showing volumetrics. He stole the scene from you.
Just a question, Ryan. So there's no system out there that doesn't create scene dependencies. Like it feel like in the way what you're saying is that IKBooster feels like you're doing.
It's pretty much the only thing out there that does not create scene dependencies because of the way it works.
It's like almost like a stop motion. It's almost like a stop motion puppet.
It's basically an animation system geared towards experienced animators who don't want to futz with the creating scene dependencies or slowing down their scenes with IK constraints or anything like that. So
okay, so the Maya
has
one
a higher learning curve than other animation systems is what I'm saying.
But the Maya one, you say it creates in a way that
it is not the same.
It's not as immediate because of the dependencies. Are the dependencies bad? What's the like?
Well, you can't create it. You can't just create certain constraints on the fly. You have to do it through Maya's tool set. So I mean, Motion Builder is a little bit more flexible as it's not limited to a human biped figure. With Maya's human IK, it is, but with Motion Builder, it's not.
But Motion Builder, it has something of that sort.
It does, but it creates scene dependencies, and it's like it is better in the terms of user friendliness, and but it's still not quite as flexible as IKBooster, in my opinion. Like you just don't get IKBooster's flexibility in any other software.
When you talk about flexibility, is also about some like immediacy and freedom, right? It's like you don't have to have someone really setting up everything for you in order for you to get something out of the.
Yeah, pretty much like like if I want to pin this character's finger here. Now you can't do this in Maya too, where you can pin certain bones, but it's still part of the constraint setup that is set up for you. That still creates it's still constraints that you have to fight against if you want to add anything on top of this.
It takes you out of what you're doing. Is that it?
pretty much.
Like it forces you to go to menus and to toggle things and to.
Yeah, and it's like I would prefer to instead, just go, okay, well, I don't want to have to set up an explicit rig to have this character's foot. Like if I hold the control key, I can just move the character's entire foot. Or if I don't want their foot to rotate, I can just lift it up and it stays level with the floor. All right. Or if I want them to move on their toes, I can just change the fixed points, and there you go. It's like I've just demonstrated 3 different control schemes that you would have to layer on top of each other with a standard rig setup. And this is why I continue to use IKBooster despite how old it is, despite that it's been around for like a decade and a half now almost.
Yeah, it would also almost be nice if this was like some standalone thing or some,
That wouldn't help anything, but like if I were smart enough, I would replace IKBooster myself, but I'm not. So it's like
not yet.
Not yet, but by the time
maybe Oliver could do in 5 lines of code.
Maybe. But, I don't think he has that much free time.
I wonder how. I was just thinking there, and this is irrelevant really, but I'm just wondering how this compares to Presto.
I don't know. I honestly don't. I mean, isn't Presto a proprietary thing though?
Yeah, it is. But I'm just wondering how, it's obviously the industry standard for Pixar. It's what they do everything, and I'm just curious to know how.
That was funny that you said industry standard and then Pixar.
Well, for Pixar, yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean,
for Pixar,
give it a week. Give it a week. They'll bring it out open source because that's what they do for everything.
Yeah. It'd be cool if we could get our hands on that.
Presto's idea is not about this. Presto's idea is about, of course, it might have something similar working behind it, but the idea is to replace, instead of having a character sheet where you click on the hotspots to select the controllers for certain parts of the rig, you basically do that, but clicking on the mesh. So it feels like, a direct approach. And also the manipulation. You also just click and drag and things
which
happen.
Is literally what I mean, because from what Ryan's showing us there, it has that kind of very tactile feedback where you're not really like constantly going into menus. You're just like, hey, I'll drag that little point and wiggle it, and that's sort of the thing that Ryan was showing there.
Yeah, but I don't remember seeing.
I'm not saying it is that good.
I didn't see many of demos of it, but you can't do build your own logic on the rig on the fly, and I think that's one of the things that Ryan really points out a lot.
It's something I heavily depend on in all the projects that I do, because clients want